Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Stand Alone, where we meet with the best of the best, where we go from being ordinary to extraordinary. And what it takes to be extraordinary is a lot. And so, even though we like to keep things as simple as possible, we have to make sure that we talk and communicate to people that are doing what seems to us like the undoable, because it pushes us to stretch ourselves. And, in our meeting today with a very, very special guest with something that's linked to a cause that's very near and dear to me, we have Devitt with us today. And, for me, first, I want to say, Glenn, as a person who's served in the Army, as a veteran, as a person who's dedicated many years of service to our great nation and beyond on a global level, I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. Thank you for also taking it to another level. And that's really what being extraordinary is all about to me. It's about never stopping. It's about how do I get better every day, improving myself. And in doing so, we make a contribution to this earth. And whenever I have a guest, I have to absorb myself into them. I have to find ways to get into your mind, how you think, do all these things. And it's incredible what you do. It's also very dark and scary. And we're going to talk about that today, because what you do is something that is so incredible, so that when bad things happen to us, there are people like you that can come in and do what you do best. So thank you for that. So we have in our presence, we have Devitt with us. As I said before, he has a background in the Army. He's a veteran right now. He worked with the Department of Homeland Security. Then he founded a company, Sentinel Foundation, that now trains people to go after the human trafficking area, where they're saving children and doing incredible work. And they're using technology to do this, which is also very, very smart. So I want to say welcome first. And then if you can, in your intro to everyone today, talk about why this matters to you, because for you to dedicate yourself to this, you had to study what you're doing and you had to put yourself in the arena and get dirty to be able to fight this fight. So why does this matter to you so that you can dedicate so much of your energy and your heart to this?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show here. Yeah, I don't think any of us pick to join into the child crime or human trafficking fight. I think you're called or impacted in one way or the other. My career started, 9/11 happened my senior year of high school. Next day, I went to the recruiter's office to join up. The selfless service has always been a part of my life, even from a childhood. My dad was on multiple nonprofits, even though we come from a lower income family. He was always giving back in the community. And so I think he just instilled that, giving back and helping others. As it says in the Bible, it's about the deed, not the glory. And, when you give, you get. And so it was instilled at a young age. And then so serving through the military, going to Iraq, Afghanistan, I worked intelligence, human intelligence, working with people and seeing cultures. And I realized that, in every country, they're just like us, whether they're, who your enemy is, or they're really not that far off from who you are, right? It's just some basic principles that in their lives that kind of change them and what they're passionate about. And so I connected with so many people around the world. And like for me, I left, I did the wars, and I kind of got fed up with the whole government and, one man's freedom fighters is another man's terrorist mentality. And I wanted to still use my skill sets, and I was really good at hunting and tracking individuals down. And I just Googled when I was getting medically retired, like, child rescue operations. There was really nothing out there. OUR had just started Operation Underground Railroad, and I didn't know. So I went into a special program called the H.E.R.O Corps, which was Human Exploitation Rescue Operative. And they took former special operations intelligence operators, people from that. So it was like class 2. And basically they taught you the mindset behind pedophiles, then how they were grooming children, the psychology behind it. And then we did digital forensics. And so I had really no computer experience. I had like basic knowledge of like Napster and like basic understanding of like stealing data from like or music online is the only thing I really knew how to do. And I kind of fell in love with the art of tracking individuals through the cyber world, because I did it in the physical world. So I did that for a year. You know, I watched kids get raped every day. And for me, it was just, I couldn't physically, mentally do it anymore. Like just going in and turning on my monitor and having to watch these videos. It was just, I couldn't do it. Like I was just physically getting sick and it was messing me up mentally. So I wanted to go out there and still do it. So, you know, I partnered the first year with my skill sets with an organization, and I worked undercover in 8 different countries. So I took the cyber ability with the on the ground ability that I had for the military, combined them together and called them cyber enabled operations. And we were extremely successful of going out and finding these individuals because everybody was online. So this is back in, I think, like 14, 15. Nobody really was exploiting the online digital persona to on the ground. And we took that fight right to the on the ground. And during this period in time, I actually got really good. We call it hacking, like I taught at top hacking conferences. It's called open source intelligence. So I became an expert in the world at doing this. And so I would do it in the field, and then I would go train governments on how to do it. And then, you know, we realized quickly that we needed to be part of the operations because they couldn't play the underground. They didn't have the computers. And so we would kind of walk them through and get them to a certain level for it. And then that was the start of the Sentinel Foundation. After a year of working with the other nonprofit, I wanted to start my own and get after it. And so we did. And, you know, we self-funded for the first 4 years, didn't know how we were going to do it. We used our for-profits to fund the nonprofit. And then, you know, eventually you knock on the door long enough, it opens up. And so we grew it. Yeah, so that's the beginning and the start of the Sentinel Foundation. So to date, you know, I just left as the CEO last month, passed it off to a great leader that I think can take us to the next level. But I don't know, I think I've been in like 15 plus countries and 40 plus operations over 8 years. And I think it was a critical part of changing me as a person, as a human. And, you know, it's left a lasting impact, no doubt.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what's incredibly important for us to all understand is that a lot of us turn a blind eye to what's going on. A lot of us, and it's easy to do this. We can just say like, you know, I don't see anything, so I don't know anything until something affects you personally. And then in that moment, who do you go to reach out for help? And so that's why I just want to say thank you for what you do, because we never really know who to call until that time happens. And then we're just so thankful that there are people in place that have been preparing and are fighting that fight for us. So I know you've saved so many children. I've watched some videos on you where you talk about, you know, just the handprint that you see that, you know, touches you and keeps you going. Why do you have to watch all those videos? Like there was one thing that you said where you're watching it and the sound of the child really, really got to you. Why do you have to watch that stuff? How does that equip you to help fight the enemy?
They've gotten better over time with, you know, fingerprinting it with photo DNA and other things. And the Thorn organization is another great nonprofit that works in the tech space for it. But look, when you have a victim, like, so we see the video once, like say Glenn sees it, then I don't have to watch it again. But if somebody changes anything, they add a little bit, they change the sound, like it gives it a new fingerprint and you have to watch it. And so back when I was doing this, you know, the technology hadn't really caught up. And so it was a lot of going through because there could potentially another victim. There could be like, you're doing a lot of no, there's a program called victim identification that they have at C3 Cybercrime Center in DC for Homeland Security, but you have to go through, you have to listen. Maybe there's a queue of a train in the background that can give me a location. Like, I mean, there's wall outlets that could potentially give me a location of where this child is in the world. Like you don't no idea. So sometimes, like I was in North Carolina, we get victims that would travel to said Philippines, travel to Thailand, and they have all these videos of everything from infants to teenagers, and you're just like have to process all this data, but then use that anger to fuel the fire to then hunt these individuals. I mean, we had individuals in the dark web that were trying to get girls to kill themselves through blackmail and sexual exploitation and other things. And I mean, we were going through reading every email so I could figure out what time zone he's in based on how he's communicating and hoping he doesn't have a night shift job. I mean, these are all the things that you have to go into. So imagine this guy's working for 4 years, exploiting these girls, and then I have to read every single email he's ever sent to then map out exactly where he's at. There's just a lot. You can't ever take the human element out of this. And so, hopefully one day it gets to the point where, AI is just identifying this information, and I'm sure they're working on it now. But the evil exists, and they're always innovating. And so, like, I learned a lot of my skill sets in the hacking and OSINT world based on how guys were hiding and operating, right? And so you learn from it, and you analyze it, and it sucks. Like, eventually, like, I got to tip my hat off to law enforcement. I have friends that have done this for 20 to 30 years that are just in the fire watching it. And I think they're the true heroes. The law enforcement you see every day, the ICACs, the Internet Crimes Against Children, like, they're the people you should be saying thanks for your service. I think in the military, we get to go, we deploy, and we live these fights, and we go to the war, and we come home, we can chill. There's cops that are just doing this day in, day out, day in and day out. Like, it messes up them mentally, and they sacrifice their life to do this work.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Your background is in human intelligence and then counterintelligence. So I'd like to know the difference between the two. But then I'd also like to really go into this because for a lot of our audience, it's entrepreneurs, it's people in business, it's people that want to do better. So we study mindset so much. For me, I have a science background. I was studying to be a doctor. And when we did psychology courses, it's like we breezed through it and we didn't pay any attention to it because we were about what we could touch, like the bones, the muscle. And then when I got to business, I really realized, man, oh man, is that thing powerful? The mind, psychology. And I know that you did like 4 weeks of studying the mindset of pedophiles. And I wanted to talk to you about this because one of the things that I love about what you do and who you are is God plays a big role in your life, and you, to me, are fighting evil. And so when you're looking at the mindsets of people, in one of the videos, you said that they actually studied the brain waves of babies that were abused and how it changed. This is incredible. So how is this relationship? Like, what's happening to the psychology of the predator and the prey? And, what do we have to be aware of in a mindset standpoint of view so that we can be aware, especially as a female, how do I prepare myself and my daughter to be mentally strong, to be able to see when someone is doing that ahead of time to prepare myself? Because the mindset, I think there's a sickness there. I don't know if I'm correct or not. Is it evil? Is it a sickness? Is it both? What is making this happen?
Yeah, so I'll talk about what you just said first of like your children, because I think that's almost a priority. And then I'll go back to like my military career and human intelligence, counterintelligence, and how it played a role into now. The first thing, and I try to tell people all the time, is like communicating, because I have 3 young girls and I have a boy also, so I have 4 kids. There can't be any secrets. They need to know, like, the first thing from the cases I've worked and the case of law enforcement work, when there's grooming happening, it's most likely not a stranger. This individual, so they're either going to a camp, they're your cousins, your uncles, somebody you trust. It's an older white male. A white male between age 22 to 65. It's just statistics, right? And so with these individuals, you have to realize your children. You have to tell them there is no secrets, and say, like, hey, if anyone comes to you, you got to let me know if they're trying to keep a secret with you from outside of us, because that's the first step of grooming, is building that trust and keeping that secret between them, right? Talk to them about, like, obviously, depending on the age, like, your private areas, nobody should touch them. If anyone goes against that, then that's it, right? With teenagers, even though, like, I've taught my kids, like, I'm an expert at open source intelligence. Like, my son still got hacked. Like, he got all of his, like, skins from a Rust game stolen. This is years ago. And I was like, I told you exactly what they would do. This is how they'll go about it. And they did exactly that. And you still let it happen. And so I was like, look, this is a very valuable lesson of how easy and how good these individuals are at manipulating you, right? Like, you have to see, if something doesn't feel right, it most likely is not right. And it's hard. It's hard because it's your worst fear, right? And I don't ever take it for granted. Anybody that my children are going after, I don't have like random sleepovers at houses, because I know that's a big thing for my young girls. So like I have to know them in the area. I'm going to do my research. I'm going to make sure. And you may trust that family, but finding out who else is in that household. Do they have a brother visiting? Is there anybody else that's not normal that should be at that house? Is because these guys are targets of opportunity, right? You'll see a bunch of things of child sexual abuse material, right? Which is young girls being raped, and then they sell it online and people consume it, right? Well, if I consume that type of pornography, it's because eventually I would act depending if I have the opportunity to act, right? And so that's why these guys travel abroad. Travel sex tourism is huge. It's why these guys go to the Philippines and they consume it over there and they come back. But eventually they can't get over there and they try to consume it here, but they know that risk is there. And that dovetails into the, like, are they evil? I think there is a huge play. You know, like I found my faith slowly through doing this work. The first time, because I used to be an atheist, the first time was when I was watching these videos. Cop out of Houston, Texas, because that's where we did our training. He's like, man, he's like, if you don't believe in Christ after doing this work, there's something wrong with you, because once you see the level of evil, you have to know that there's a level of good, right? For every action, there's equal reaction. And so if you see and you look these videos, you see these guys, they are, if I could show you some of them when they're getting their interrogation done, like there's something in them that is evil. Then it goes to the factor of this crime has been so suppressed, like through the Catholic Church, that you saw was a huge issue today. Because I'm not saying the Catholic Church is full of them, but I know that predators went into the Catholic Church because they had a system of abusing children. And so they all knew about it. They knew the system, they joined it, right? And so you had all these young boys, these young girls that were abused. And I think it's the young boys that are abused, and it normalizes them. If you look at the psychology about like when women are raped, and it messes them up mentally because they get pleasure, but it's also pain that they didn't want, right? And so there's this balance of equilibrium. And so I think, me personally, I'm not saying statistics, but I think there is a lot of people that were abused as children, and it may have been when they were a baby and they don't realize it, right? They may have been when they were 2 or 3 and those memories are suppressed, or they either go full steam and like helping others, or they go in and they become the predator that preyed on them. It's a very complex. I don't think we'll ever fully understand unless we retroactively go back and we start interviewing every pedophile in the political or the prison system. Political system, prison, the same thing, right? And we ever go fully interview these individuals and find out like what was the root cause, where they abuse the children, like how many studies have been done on that. Yeah, it's a very complex, and it's just sad, man. Is because when you see a child that has been physically raped and abused, the chances of them having a successful life is so small, because you have addictions, you have, learning disabilities, you have physical disabilities from when these happen to them. And so it ruins their life, and I personally don't think until we have severe penalties where the individual is away for life. People throw around the death sentence as more of a scare tactic now, until they actually start like, hey, you do this, you're killed. Like the human race and is only controlled by what? Laws and regulations. Like people are still alive because it's illegal to murder them. There are people, that have the skill set, right? And like in that mentality, because we're not really a faith-based community anymore. Like right now, for a lot of like us in the faith-based, like we fear judgment from our, Jesus and Christ and our after beings. If you don't have that, you only fear so much, right? You fear a little bit of your freedoms, but if you can get away with it, the consequences aren't there. And so we have problems across the board. And so I'll shut up there in case you have any questions. I kind of threw a lot at you.
No, I
and I don't
think
want
this
to ramble.
No, it's really impactful because this gets to like the core issue. For me, I had no concept of what self-development was until I came into the business world. And I think knowing people that are, special operators, the amount of work that they do on themselves, like the amount of nonstop work that has to happen. You had mentioned that you were working on a project to get veteran cell phones, and you came up with this name Black Box, which I think is genius. And I think this is powerful for business people to start thinking about like what is going on inside of you that has to be worked out, because in some of your rescues, there are women that are trafficking other girls, and what is happening there. And So from your expertise, from your experience on the field, what would you say is the importance of like doing the work on yourself, even with your level of intelligence and skill set? You work on yourself. You don't stop. It still can get to you. And then we have people that are like, they just think like, I don't need to work on myself. Could we get your voice advocating for people to do the hard work on themselves?
Yeah, like, I mean, I think that's the most important thing that you can do. Like I always threw myself into fire, it's the moth to the flame. So I spent a lot of time working undercover, you're going to these countries and you're living yourself like a dirtbag, like criminally, like you're partying, you're going after, you're hanging around these like very dark energies, and I'd come back and I had to be a father like the next day. There's no like offsetting or off gassing from it. And then like, so it ties into a lot like with the suicide side. Like I've had so many friends kill themselves over the years. Like I wrote my first eulogy that I was like 21 after we got back from Iraq. And like that mental side of things, I felt myself, man. I was one of those guys. I was hooked on Percocets. They gave me 8 Percocets a day that when I got out of the VA because I got medically retired. I was on Zoloft and all these other things, and I was not the same person. I was at a low. Like the only reason I'm still here is because of the children I had, right? And so I was fortunate enough to have children and fortunate enough to get out of that dark side, but I saw how quickly it sloped and went down. And so, I did create the black box. My boy Chuck came up with a name for it, but I created the program where basically doing digital forensics on cell phones of soldiers that killed themselves to then use machine learning to identify trends and patterns in it. Because if you could solve it for veterans, I could solve it potentially for teens and for teachers and for police. And for me, it's one of those things. I wasn't working undercover during 2020 during COVID, and somebody came to me and said, "Glenn, how would you use technology to solve this?" And I have an innovative mind or creative thinking mind, and I think it is God's plan. Like He gave me all these skill sets to finally somebody came and asked me, and it combines OSINT, it combines machine learning, it combines digital forensics, it combines complex analytics. And so that's where that idea came from. It was more of like I was in that position and I wanted to solve it so I was able to get out. But I know there's a lot of people and buddies that have not got out. And so if I could help them get out of it, for that side. And then for working on it, like I got this little baby's hand tattooed on my wrist here because I almost closed my nonprofit down after like 2 years because it was like, well, I was like, well, if I tattoo it, I have to keep doing it because I was like really struggling mentally of like going and doing this work. And then for me, like I can't, some of the shit that you watch in these videos, I can't even talk to a third because it would fuck them up, right? Like it would mentally, if I walk through the haunting images that I was and for me, it was always dreams, like nightmares. I couldn't get out of it. It wasn't me physically in the present. I can do a really good job of compartmentalizing and putting information aside and focusing. It was more when I'm sleeping. And so for me, plant medicine, doing ayahuasca, like that reset. And so I just looked into like, what are some cheat codes out there if we're like really getting through? I don't want to do therapy. I don't want to talk to anybody, but so I can work through it myself. And, like ayahuasca for sure saved my life. I think a lot of people overuse it now. I think people use it as like recreational, like, oh, let me go see some cool shit. And it's like surgery for your soul. And it cleansed my soul and gave me enough to get a good level footing for it. And so then it's work, right? You got to constantly improve. And so I've always felt that by helping others, I help myself. I almost look at it as like the people always say, oh, thank you for your service and man, you're a hero. And I truthfully don't like that. It's because I look at it as when I was saving kids or if I did operations, it made me feel good. And so it's like a benefit to the universe is like, I can go help these kids. And also it makes me feel good at helping them and give them a chance at life. And so, long story short, that's kind of like how I basically went through is by helping others, it helped me heal. But I needed to get on a level flat playing field. Like I had to cleanse that system to go through it. So I'm a big believer in microdosing mushrooms. If you need that jump start, do ayahuasca. If you have addiction issues, go do iboga because it's not for everybody. Like I think there's a plant medicine that depending on what you go through can actually help you get into the right mental clarity. And now I do it with the root people. I know there's a lot of hippies that do that shit in California with some woman that went down in Amazon. I believe of going to the root of the medicine, the experts of the medicine, and doing an indigenous ceremony, because they cracked the code on this stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just important that you went on a mission to heal yourself and you didn't just ignore it and, suppress it, because it's coming out in your dreams, it's coming out. And I think that really just haunts people, and then they don't know how to deal with it in the everyday.
well,
I wanted,
I would say too is like you bring that up is, all of my other companies and my for profits and entrepreneur innovations and patents and everything, it didn't start really hitting until I cleared that trauma. Right. It
wow,
was like I had all these roadblocks and my dish was not connecting to the universe. And once I cleared it, then I felt like it's like cheating. I felt like I could see things 4 moves ahead of time versus focusing on the trauma or having that subconscious trauma messing me up. And so I think it's important for people in business, especially entrepreneurs, like if you have anything back there that's holding you back, like go clear that, and then you're going to be even better at the work that you're doing. I know it's granted and guaranteed, but I'm just telling you from my place of my place.
yeah, I love this because in our business, we do a lot of extra work. And sometimes I can see people's faces. Why are we talking about this? And then I just say, like, this stuff, when you are whole as a person, you can do a lot more. Your carrying capacity just increases tremendously. And instead of getting burnt out and all those other things happening to you. What makes you tired? What makes you reach that limit where you say, okay, I have seen enough. I need a moment. I need to regroup. I need a cleanse. Like, where do you have that point? What do you do? How do you refresh yourself?
Yeah, I feel like I lose my mind every like every year or two, like Van Gogh, right? The like when you I think there's people like us that just have that personality where you're just like fully into it. Like I'm ADHD, I'm dyslexic. Like I go and I just go full into something and it consumes me to the point where I start spiraling. And so I found myself what I'm really good at is like I found my work wife. So like my boy Jameson, like we do everything together because he's almost like he knows how to handle my craziness. Like he knows how to like he's almost like my handler. He's my best friend. Like I love the dude, and so he can make sure that like certain people that like suck my energy don't get near me. He can make sure that he's like my blocker. He rosemary and he leaves me to think and analyze. And so I think in business it's so important to have that yin to yang. I think so many of us want to be that guy that does everything, or that girl that wants to do everything. And I think for you to be able to do everything is almost near impossible in this world. Like, really find out your strengths and your weaknesses. And like, I think Jameson for me completes me. He could do the work that I could do, but I could just do certain things better than him. And he could definitely do things better than I can do. And so by having that balance, he has helped me. And we probably made that commitment about 3 years ago. We were like, everything we do, he's my co-founder, my nonprofit, every company we have, we're founders in it together. And so he really he sees me kind of spinning and he'll start like bringing me back like, and it's just like awesome place to be, and then finally having that person to kind of really balance you out.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important for just to be around good people. But if you can find that partner in business that can, almost like a protection for you, it makes you go further. That's a for sure thing. I love what you say about fear. I think in the business world, Glenn, people are very, very much about, like, it's a weird thing talking about fear, and people in business today, they don't like the feeling of fear, but you are an advocate of it. And you even say that there's a strong role of fear, and that, creating this for the people that traffic people so that they don't do those wrong things. Um, the fear of knowing they will be hunted. I really would like for you to talk about this because I feel like I intuitively know this. God said, the beginning of all wisdom is fear. We as a society are so afraid to offend people that we like are so careful with what we say. We don't want to put that spirit of fear on people. Meanwhile, it does serve a certain purpose. So can you talk about that? Because especially in the world of what you deal with,
Yeah.
fear could stop people dead in their tracks from doing harm to others. And so what is the role of fear? How do you use it? How do you go into someone's psychology and then be able to make them make better decisions and still be responsible with that also?
Yeah, like for me, I think it's the only way to stop people from doing anything is they have to fear the consequences of their actions. You're never like you can't rely on people just being good people when you're
Right.
dealing with an evil topic. And so it really boils down to, I think it was like India, and I've quoted this before, but they were having gang rapes, like 18 guys, 15 guys raping these young girls on these buses. And then the people rose up, like a million people went on this huge march. And basically, overnight, they were like, okay, happens again, death sentence. And so the politicians feared their voters, which then, because the voters mattered, which then created a rule where the predators fear being the predator. Right. And so it's a fear cycle that has to be created. Like every revolution was started because the government then, like, the people didn't fear the government anymore. They said enough's enough, and they went after it. Right. And then the government's like, oh, we're fearing these individuals uprisings. Let's give them what they want. I think it just happened in Kenya. They made a tax that was coming out, and they basically, all the people start rioting. And I'm not suggesting that, but they were like, enough's enough. They changed the law because they feared the people not being happy. And so I think in the child crime fight, like, you have to have it. They have to fear either our technology. Like, if we took what we have in the counterterrorism at the NSA and we put that into a child crime fight, it would end overnight. Like, it would end overnight. Like back in 2008, and I quote this all the time. We had 300,000 people in the US that, like, minimum 5 years in prison. Less than 3% were investigated because there wasn't money in that. So they don't fear being hunted from that. And so if you bring our technology in that we really do have capable of to go after these pedophiles, they're all going to be caught. Then, like, you're not going to have this issue. But I think there's multiple reasons we haven't done that. There's some laws that they get arrested, then we have to disclose some of it. But I think there's workarounds we can do that. If they put the money into the fight, like right now, I don't want to be quoted on this, but I think it was like $62 million were cut out of the child crime budget, right? Of the child crime fight for the whole US, for the ICAC or for everybody else, like 20 million or something, like out of a 62 million. It was something ridiculously small. Meanwhile, Border Patrol or Homeland, like Border Patrol, I think has like $2.5 billion or something ridiculous, like in their fight. Or no, I'm sorry, it was the DEA. DEA has like $2 billion in their fight against the war on drugs, but we have like less than 100 million in the child crime fight. Say we have 250 million. The DEA has $2 billion budget fighting drugs, but we have a $200 million fight. Like, nobody's going to fear that. They're not knocking on every door of the pedophile that we can arrest right now. It's crazy. And like, I used to think, like, I stay out of the conspiracy things and I try not to get into it, but eventually you got to start looking at our politicians. Like, they're not either passing laws, they're cutting money. Like, what is going on? Either they're fearing it and they're a part of it, or they're okay dumping money into the war on drugs versus child crimes, which absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah, I was listening to someone say 40 billion spent to fight against drugs and 40.2 million on saving kids. And so when you hear that, like, what is the cause? And we don't know, but like, you are, as politicians, there to serve the people. And so that is very, very alarming. But I think the answer is, when you follow the money, you do find out what the real answer is.
Yeah, it
In
needs to change.
yeah, in summarizing, what you've done and, where you're going now, I wanted to ask you, like, I think that's beautiful what you said, where you've developed all these skills for your whole life. And this is important for people to hear today, because a lot of people, especially young people, I work with a lot of young people, they're very lost because they feel like, well, what I'm doing right now, I don't feel passionate about it. And I always say, it's not about you feeling passionate about what you're doing right now. Get a skill, get another skill, get really competent at what you do. And then one day in your life, it may be 5 years, 7 years, 15 years from now, someone is going to need you, and you're going to be prepared and ready to deliver. And that literally has happened to you, where you have all these skills accumulated, and now you're going to get paid tenfold. But for young people today, when they're just interested in, how do I make a quick buck? How do I cash in? How do I do the fast thing? You know, what could you give as words of wisdom for young people that are in a career to just stay put, buckle down, and develop that level of competency?
I think the biggest thing that you can take away is when you're comfortable, you're not growing. And so you have to really get into a field or learn a thing. Like I used to be that way. I used to, because I came from a very low income family. And so I was always hungry. I was always working. I was always doing jobs and figuring out. And like, I just wanted to be a millionaire. It was always a goal. And like, you just constantly want to grow and do these things. And until like, I think this past year, it really hit me that my kind of life has been like Slumdog Millionaire, the movie, where he's answering the final questions, and every part of his life was a question that he fulfilled, right, in his life. And he brought back, all these answers because it was a memory that happened that led to that moment in time. And I think by me finding Christ and everything like along those lines, I realized that like I'm not in control of this thing. As much as I want to take control of it, I need to really enjoy the moment that I'm in, to really, because you see these crypto guys and, oh, I'm driving around this Bugatti at 25. That is not realistic at all. And most of that is a facade. Most most top tech CEOs are in their 40s, right? Most millionaires don't happen until their 40s and 50s. Most billionaires are in their 60s. And so if you have that mentality, it's like, find a place that you can live comfortable, right? Like you either get two things, right? I either get a job that is going to be so rewarding in the work, but it's not as much pay, but I'm getting so much work. Like my nonprofit work was filling my soul, was giving me skill sets. I was doing my nonprofit work, but it made me an expert in the world where I've trained every secret agency out there on how to do this, because I got my foot in the door by doing the nonprofit work, right? Like it was a skill that then I could leverage for money. It put me at the table. My tech side of things, I don't have these tables at these big tech companies if I wasn't leading with my nonprofit. So I was giving and getting at that same time. And so I would feel, when you feel stagnant, it's probably time to move on and see that new career. But don't rush it. Don't, when you jump into it, learn everything you can in that field and be the best that you can. Now, that shouldn't take you 5 to 10 years, right? Like I think in my side for Ocean, I went from going to a conference to teaching there at the top level in a year and a half, because it consumed me, and I did it day in and day out, right? I put in every hour I could in my free time to be an expert at that. I think a lot of people waste time with meetings. Like they have a lot of useless meetings. Like if you have one company and you're busy, you're probably doing something wrong. From my perspective, because I had nonprofits, I had for-profits, I had, at the same time, I'm running 3 different companies, and it's about time management going through it. So I think if you look at, you're never too busy. You're just making busy work for you. You're not trusting the people that you have. And so I would say is just like, be patient, but also don't be complacent.
Yeah, and a lot of times in business, we're talking about things that we don't need to be talking about, and we are wasting time. It's a wasted energy also too.
I think the best thing I did was I cleared my Monday. Nobody is allowed to have a meeting with me on Monday. Like that is my day for innovation and thinking. Like
Yeah.
everybody else can have meetings for that. That is also my flex day. So if something pops up, I always have Monday. If I'm out networking, somebody's like, hey, when you can draw Monday, right? Because usually everybody else works on Monday. And so it was a way for me to spend that day. I'll either go relax, I'll play video games, I'll focus on some work, I'll do a little innovation. You know what I mean? Like there's some, like, I think it's important for people to have that day to set aside for their own physical mentality. I don't think that you need to be working every day. If you are, then if you're as a CEO and as a business person, then you don't really have a good team, or you're not trusting that individuals to work and do the work that they need to do.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you say, like, as a CEO and as a business leader, and this should inspire people to get to that level, because then you can clear that time to be more of a visionary. But there are times where you're entering a company where you are putting in 18-hour days sometimes, and you don't come up for air, and it's just nonstop.
That's a good point. Yeah, difference between being a leader and an employee, right? Like I'm unemployable. I've come to that conclusion. I went and worked for other guys. Like I'm straight up unemployable. I cannot. I've pissed every CEO off that I've tried to advise and mentor, because I'm like, I don't care. I'm gonna say what I want, and like, so I was like, Well, if I'm unemployable, I should probably start my own companies, because it was only the first year I realized that like I can't work with people, like that. Yeah. So I got tired of making other people money. When you start making other people millions, you're like, hey, I want a piece of it. Now, granted, that's not for everybody. Everybody's not going to be out there and be, if you're going to be an employee, learn as much as you can in that field, and then you go to your next one and learn more that you can. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great process. What can we do from a civilian point of view to like add more value? I think about this all the time. I feel like I live in a bubble, and this is why I do the podcasting. This is why I reach out to people that are exceptional. And to me, an exceptional person isn't just good in one area of their life. They're looking at being good in their relationships, in their spiritual world, in their financial world, all of that coming together. Um, but as a civilian, sometimes I feel like, what can I do more to add value? Because I didn't join the military, and I'm not going on a special op. I'm not rescuing children, but what can I do from where I am to add more value, to make a difference?
Yeah, I would say is you find out what you're passionate about, like something's impacting your life where you either didn't have something or you saw something and you want to help that. Maybe it's inner city teens that just didn't have a father or a mother, or maybe it's somebody was arrested and they really just had a bad beat at life. Maybe there's like I had a kid in Colombia that had a backwards leg that we found, and we didn't know how to do it, but we turned his leg backwards to forward in 1 year. I'm like, that gave me just as much joy as it did from dealing with the trafficking, if not more, because you gave that kid a chance. If you haven't traveled outside the U.S., 30% of Americans have passports. The other 70% don't. I would say is go see what a third world country looks like. Go on it doesn't have to be a Christian mission, but go on in a medical mission. There's so many places you can volunteer to go. Maybe like my sister-in-law just is going to Guatemala today to go give glasses to individuals that I can't see, like they've never had glasses before. So be able to give vision to a person is very impactful. Go feed somebody that is starving. Like I would just say is you will feel way better in life when you actually put a smile or you see a tear from somebody because you impacted them, than you will get out of any day of working any job or saving up or any vacation. Like I can't wait to get to the point where my vacation, my family's just going around doing mission work and helping kids. And because that gives me more joy than sitting on a beach drinking a Mai Tai and wasting my time for it. So I really just challenge you to get out. If like I get help all the time, like, oh, how do I go rescue kids? I'm like, look, I wouldn't, you couldn't apply to American Airlines. You've never flown an airplane before. You know what I mean? Like you'll kill a bunch of people just like you'll kill yourself. And so your skill sets have to match up with what you want to do. But using an excuse and saying that I can't help, there's plenty of organizations in the trafficking space you can volunteer to bring awareness and get your foot in the door. Like I was a guy that wouldn't let on operations because I was a cyber tech dude until I bullied my way onto operations. Right. And so sometimes it's just getting your foot into the door and then taking over that space if you have that mentality and personality.
Okay, great. Where can people go to find more about you, to donate? I think that's very important too. I know we have the Centennial website that we want to be able to give to everyone to make donations to help what you do in the private sector. And where can people find more about you, like for your next ventures that you're a part of?
Yeah, so foundationsentinel.org. I think it's sentineldonations.org. Also, like you can go to foundationsentinel.org. You can go to my Instagram, glenn.devitt, GLENN.devitt, DEV as in Victor, ITT. For any information about me or the nonprofit. They're a great organization. They're still doing amazing work out there. My next venture is getting them in a stealth mode in a tech startup that I got patents around. So I'm running with that right now. So I'll be head down because I'm a big believer in the more money you make, the more good you can do. So by taking this leave of absence from this fight, it gives me a mental clarity, mental break. I'm going to go make as much money as I can and then put that money back in and figure out what I want to help next. I see myself when I'm 70, probably digging wells in Africa or something. I think like you go through, make that money. It's like the story of the fisherman. You go through it, but then you just get back to day one of just out there by yourself, just hanging out and helping people.
Yeah, I love that. That's a full circle moment. Good stuff. Well, thank you, Glenn, for your time. Thank you for your wisdom, and thank you for the impact in the world and even to us as individuals. It's inspiring, and I just want you to know that your life matters, and like what you've given, it's inspiring to very many people. And that's, I'm not a fan of social media, but that's what's great about social media, where you can connect with some amazing people and let that inspire you. You don't need to be envious of people. It doesn't need to like destroy you and make you feel less. It should just inspire you to say like, wow, that's incredible. And so I hope you know that you are one of those people that's inspiring to many.
Well, thank you for giving a voice to the fight. You know, there is no change without a voice. And so it all starts with conversations like this. So thank you for all the work you're doing. It's been an honor.
Thank you.